Hello there.
Hey, Ashley.
Hey, Paul. I'm super excited for today. I'm gonna let a couple people. I'm gonna give it maybe 30 seconds here and let people kind of trickle in.
Okay.
But 9 times out of 10, people are gonna be watching this recorded anyway. Um, well, thanks everybody who has joined so far. I am super excited for the LinkedIn Live today. So, this is the first one in 2024. I'm super excited. I feel like this is a great. So, I have Paul Farr here, and I think this is a perfect one to start off with because Paul is just such an amazingly smart engineer. But he also is just such an incredible leader and mentor. So I'm super excited to kind of start the year off strong. I think that for those of you who are in the maybe career transition part of your life right now, I think you're going to be able to get a lot of insight into, he has so much insight to share as far as learning from his career and the things that he has done. And then from a management perspective and a leadership perspective, he has such a just authentic, genuine personality that I think just transludes into everything that he does and empowering his people. So I'm super excited to dive into things, to get to know Paul a little bit better, to share it all with you guys. So Paul, I thought about, I have your bio in the LinkedIn Live. You guys can go and check it out, and everything. But for those people who haven't had a chance to stalk you yet, why don't do you want to just tell us just a little bit about yourself and your background and how you've gotten to where you're at now, the director of mobility at Pratt Miller? But you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. I can. I'll try not to bore you, but I guess one thing I always like to say about myself is that I wasn't born in the States. I was born in Kenya. Kind of a long story there that I won't go into, but I think it gives me a little bit of a different view on the world and what we deal with here in the States versus out of the country. I got my BSME from University in Oklahoma and graduated from there and spent a few years working for Caterpillar and Navistar Trucks. So that was kind of a good start to my career.
For sure.
And I always, I guess humbly, I always thought, oh, well, I just want to be the best engineer I can be. I want to get more experience. So that's why I ended up kind of leaving Navistar Truck. It was a lot of placing stuff on frame rails and selecting components, and it was cool, but not what I wanted to do. So I spent a lot of time. I ended up moving to Michigan, kind of kept moving north from where I went to school, and didn't really want to move north, but that's where the jobs were. So I spent several years from about 2000 to 2007 working in several automotive companies, one being ZF, Bentler Automotive, doing mostly like suspension components and frame design, things like that. But kind of where I guess I feel like I started getting into my career was when I started at Meritor.
Yeah.
And I started as a project engineer in the suspension group. And most of that was doing a lot of defense work, a lot of suspension design, which was really cool for me. I mean, I loved it. But this is kind of where my career started shifting. And my current boss in the suspension group came to me and said he's currently getting promoted to the next level up. So he's getting more responsibility. So there's an opening in the suspension group supervisor role. And it's funny because I never thought of myself as a supervisor or even wanted to be, right? And he said, well, you can apply, but only if you want to, right? And I'm like, I don't know if I want to, but you don't want to be the one that doesn't at least try, right? So I said, I'll apply and I'll do my best. And, if I don't get it, it's no harm, no foul. I'll keep doing what I'm doing. But, the craziest thing happened is I got the promotion. I leapfrogged a few very good people, I think. And, again, then you're stuck like, okay, what in the world did I just do to myself? Because you don't know how to manage people. Like, what is that? Right. Because it's really difficult to go from I hate to use those terms, but individual contributor, right, to someone that has responsibility for people. And, my whole career up to that point, I'd had a lot of different kind of managers. And so you go through a growing period there of learning what your style is, right? And I think it was not until I was chief engineer or director to where I felt like I was more comfortable with it. And I actually realized I liked what I was doing. But but that's the thing. I really realized I like the people that I work with, and I like motivating them, and I like seeing them succeed. It's not necessarily about me. But just to keep this short, I got promoted all the way up to senior director. I had responsibility for all of Meritor's industrial group, which was everything off highway specialty, which was like bus and coach, concrete mixers, and then defense. So it was a pretty big group, probably 70 people at its peak. And, after that, it was somewhere in, I think it was early 2020, I got laid off due to the COVID mess that was happening. So there was a lot of cutbacks at Meritor. And that's kind of where I'd say I hit my next biggest pivot, which was, what the heck do I do now? Do I just find a new job? But it kind of fell in place. Somebody that had worked for Meritor years before had reached out to me, that now works at Pratt Miller. And he said, "Hey, Paul, we need help. Do you want to just come over here and work?" And he didn't have like a full-time role, but he said, "Start your own LLC, and then we'll get you work to do." And, you don't realize how far out you're going by yourself, right? When you're doing something like that. You're just kind of like, okay, I'll figure out how to do an LLC, and you figure out what rate you're going to charge. And it really worked out well because, I knew a lot of the guys that I worked with at Pratt Miller. So I started working with them. We did a robotics project. And then it wasn't very long after I started it that my old job called me back. And they said, "We need your help out in Escondido," which is where they had just purchased another company that built electric vehicles. And I've got my own theories about why they bought that company, but they were needing help getting them integrated into Meritor, and how, because you're taking a startup and trying to tell them how to do things, and it doesn't always work very well. So I spent like maybe 3-4 months consulting out there, and then they made me an offer. And so I worked out there like 6 months, but in the end, it was too much time away from my kids. So I decided, and it's really funny how this worked out. I had seen my job posted by my boss, and I just texted him and said, "Should I apply at Pratt Miller?" And he's like, "Yeah, I think you should." And in the end, I didn't interview for it. He just said, "Yeah, which job do you want? We'll just work out whatever you want to do." And, that's kind of where I feel like I'm really blessed right now, that I've got, I was able to move back. I was able to, kind of change gears, get more into the mobility scene. I'd kind of started that in Escondido, but, Pratt Miller, if you know anything about them, they do anything from autonomy to robotics to electrification and, aerodynamics. It's crazy what this group does. So hopefully that wasn't too long.
Oh, that's great. I have questions though.
Okay.
So I think a lot of people can probably resonate with, one, the layoffs, during COVID, there was a stretch. And then more recently, I feel like this, like 2023 was a big one, end of 22, 23. So I was interested in asking you, like, when you formed your LLC, because I think that that's something that a lot of people that I talk with and a lot of people that I work with are considering, like, do I really want to get back in the workforce, or should I like go do my own thing?
Right.
So you've done both. So I was curious. So like what for those of people out there that are kind of considering it, what are your like what did you like about it? What did you wish you would have known before you did it? How like what's your take on that?
Yeah. I'd say as a rule, I'm probably more comfortable working like a job that has healthcare, because I have family, but it was fun in that I could kind of just do whatever work I wanted to do. And one thing, you can charge quite a bit. I would charge a rate for when I'm on site versus off site. If I was flying somewhere, you can charge for the rate to get there, right? So it's pretty lucrative. So from that end, I loved it. But then the part that I didn't like, you're never guaranteed that next paycheck's coming along, right? It's like feast or famine. So if you're willing to deal with that, I was pretty well off in that, Meritor had given me like a 7-month severance. So I was kind of double dipping on the cash, right? Which doesn't always happen, right? I was pretty lucky because I had been with Meritor for 13 years, so there was pretty sizable lump sum that I could get. But I really liked it because you can get into a lot of different things too. Like all of a sudden, I'm working at Pratt Miller, and we're doing a robot that was spraying disinfectant on chairs in the airport, right? And that was before the CDC said, the disease doesn't, or the virus doesn't last long enough, so spraying doesn't help. But at the time, it had a pretty good business case, and you're using autonomy, you're using LiDAR, and
Yep.
I really felt like it was kind of and it was fun. I got to play as an engineer again instead of manage.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I feel like you're absolutely right. When when you can do the consulting, you can kind of, get your resume. You can get a lot of projects under your belt, potentially that can make you even more diversified. So that sounds like that was a good experience. I
Yeah.
also wanted to ask you about like the shift that you made, going from Caterpillar and Navistar and even like your earlier days in Meritor. Like, how did you leverage, the transition to more electrification and advanced mobility? So like I work with a lot of people that are wanting to make that shift. They see that that's where the market's going, but they're trying to like, how do I, make that pivot? Do you have any, how did you do it? And do you have any, as you see people now, a manager, now a leader at Pratt Miller,
Yeah.
like, what's your take on that?
I guess step one, maybe I'm different than some people. When I'm looking at new hires, for example, I need, I look for, okay, have they done anything with electric vehicles? Have you had any autonomy experience? But I'm not so like, hey, you should show me that you've built a whole truck by yourself, and you can size the thermal system and pick batteries out for this truck and whatever. To me, it's all about like, if you're a good engineer and you can prove that you can learn it, that to me is key. Like, you're flexible, you're easy to work with, and here I get into my soapbox of, emotional intelligence. You can get some really smart guys, but they can't, work with anyone, right? So I kind of look for all those things. And yeah, if they have the technical capability, great. I'm not going to hire somebody that has zero experience. But for me, it took time, right? Because, I've been designing suspensions and working
Right.
on brakes for 20 years. And all of a sudden it's like, okay, what is this, right? But, I think the time out in Escondido, I was a consultant. So I was kind of just sitting on the side, making sure that things were happening, because they needed someone to represent Meritor there that could talk back to them about what's going on. So I think it really just takes time and dedication to try to understand what's going on. It's not going to come immediately. And then I also try to get online and find training that I can pick up where I'm understanding some of the aspects. I mean, you can find some stuff that's good, some of it's bad, but as you learn, then you just build on that, right? And then the other thing is actually getting experience with hands-on, because you can watch the videos all day, but until you have to do it, you're responsible for it. Um, you're not really going to learn it. Because I'm a director, but sometimes I run programs because we're pretty tight on people. And so I had a project last year that was with a customer I can't talk about, but they wanted it was for a side-by-side application, and they wanted help with sizing their battery and, the thermal analysis that goes with that to cool the batteries, etc. And I just said, hey, I'm not an expert here, but I'm going to jump in and run the program just so I learn it, right? And I've got a chief engineer that's like expert on all things electrification. So I had him as kind of like a consultant. But I think the advice is don't be scared to just jump in and try to figure it out.
Yeah, I like that. I think a lot of it also comes down to, and what I heard you say is like, sometimes it's just initiative as well.
Yeah.
Like it's the culture fit plus initiative. And sometimes the people that they don't have necessarily the right skill set, but they have the right attitude. And they, like you said, they jump in. And even like I've been talking with people about, get something, just start moving. I actually saw a new training SAE just came out with on charging. And I'm like, it's a great place to start. If you don't, you don't have anything yet, at least you're showing that like initiative that you're trying to get exposure to it. So I think those are, and even like projects around your current company or whatever, it's good to just show that initiative.
Yeah, so, I've always said if I found a person to work for me that, maybe they're not, they don't have their PhD and, whatever this topic is, but they actually can work with people and figure out ways to get around things. And, technical is a great thing and you got to be able to understand it. But if you can't, if people just hate you, then you're not going to get anything done. Right. And so, I've seen these really smart guys that I'm on calls with and I try to tell a joke and, it's like crickets. And I'm like, okay, am I here? Is anyone listening? And some of it's culture. Some of it's they're not used to that, but some of it is they just can't think like that.
Yeah.
So
on the topic of electrification and like advanced mobility and transferable skills. So obviously like Pratt Miller, they're like you were just talking about a client, can't say their name. They're very known for being like on cutting edge of knowing new technology. What would you say trend wise, like you're most excited right now to see like that's going on in the market?
Someone would probably shoot me for this, but I'd say it's not electrification. I mean,
okay.
that is kind of a thing that's been coming and it's pretty prevalent and there's a lot of efforts in it, right? But I think to me, the field of autonomy and, kind of what you can do with that autonomy. So electrification just becomes part of it. Like it's moving the vehicle and it supplies the power. But, if you can, there's a lot of industries out there right now. One example is like solar field installations. That gives you that electric power, but how do you get them out there? And do you have to have now these teams of people that are unloading and loading these panels, bolting them down?
Yeah.
And I know there's a lot of effort in, coming up with an autonomous system that a truck delivers these panels to a site, then a vehicle that's autonomous, takes those panels to a working vehicle that's on the site, and then that vehicle loads them onto the panel. And then you need like one guy to run bolts. So you're talking about be able to, the issue with finding people that want to do work, Now you've got one guy, maybe two, somebody that's just watching over the site, making sure that something dumb doesn't happen. But I think the ability for autonomy to kind of, take a lot of these jobs that, I think I heard one time there at FedEx in Memphis, they need, I don't know, I'm going to make up a number, let's say 300 people every day in the morning, and they'll get maybe a third to half that actually show up. So if you have a machine that can do, take up the slack for all that work, it's not like, hey, we're stealing your jobs, that they're not there, right? Those people just aren't showing up. So
Absolutely.
for me, that's, I think AI is another one that's coming. I won't say I understand everything about it. I'm still kind of trying to get my arms around it. But I'd say the autonomy is probably the biggest interest on my side.
I think that's a great place to start, because I think sometimes when people are like talk about autonomy or autonomous vehicles, like they're literally thinking of like Teslas and like on the road.
Right.
But like there's so much autonomy that can happen in, factory automation and installation, like you were talking about. There's such like I think that's like there's the stepping stone to like everybody just having self-driving cars, like,
Right.
So I wanted to say real quick, I'm going to pause here. So I see some people commenting in the chat. So I didn't open that up. Party foul by me. So anybody who has questions or wants to say hi, tell us where you're at. I love like seeing the comments come through. So a couple ones I see so far. Tom says that he worked with you at Bentler, Tom Bowman. And
okay. Yeah. Hey, Tom.
so he just said congrats. I have Jesus here who says you're a great engineer, and you've got the EV stuff down relatively quickly. And then I had a question that kind of transitioned me to my next questions for you too. So
Okay.
Avinash Sharma said, what's your biggest challenge in managing people?
I think the biggest thing for me is I was, and again, I try to be humble because I don't want to toot my own horn, but when I was at Meritor, I was a doer. And, I remember there were other engineers, I won't name names, right? And they were doing a great job. But my boss kept throwing more and more projects at me to a point where I had 6 suspensions that I was responsible for. And, it was a front and a rear on 3 vehicles. And, and I got the stuff done. And yeah, I remember hearing a criticism that, well, Paul always wants to get done. And I'm like, well, but that's why you're giving me all this stuff to do, because I get it done. And yeah, maybe I move quick and there might be a couple things missed, but I get it out the door. And I think to answer your question, the hardest part was going from a doer to allowing others to do it for you and trusting, because trust is such a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when I got promoted to chief engineer, and there was the manager of the suspension group, and I decided I would help him because I love suspensions, and I was just sticking my nose in. And finally he told me, I learned from him. He's like, Paul, I've got this. Like, I'll let you know if I need it. And I remember getting some advice from John Rose, who was our purchasing VP. He used to be an engineer. And he told me, he's like, if you have someone in that meeting that represents you, that works for you, get out of the meeting. Like, why are you in there? Like, because then you're not empowering them to run the meeting, to be the voice for your group. I get every once in a while I jump into meetings just so I know what's going on, but I'm not trying to usurp some sort of authority over this person, right? Because I remember if I have a meeting and I'm trying to run it and then my boss comes in and starts like kind of talking over me, then you're like, okay, well, I guess he's got it,
Yeah, for sure. I bet that's hard. When you're used to being the one, delegating can be a different mindset shift.
Yeah. And then just learning to have trust in people, because, if they feel like you've got their back and that they can do their job and they're not worried about looking over their shoulder, then I found that people just excel, but if they feel like you're like nitpicking at them, like, hey, you misspelled that word, let me help you, then they're going to be like, why am I here? What's the point of me being here?
For
That's
sure.
the worst thing you can do, I think.
So when you first made that shift, like you leapfrogged a little bit and you first made that shift, how did you ramp yourself up to being the manager? Like, were there, how did you make that shift in general?
I think it just took time. And I don't want to, that's not a cop out, but I had to take the time to get to know the team members and what they were up to. And I remember spending a ton of time just going to their office and sitting down and talking to them about what they were working on, making sure I understood it. And, after a while, I realized it was more about, me helping them do their job, not in a way like I'm telling them what to do, but if they come to you and say, hey, I'm trying to get some support from this group, it's not working, they're not helping, I really need this, that's my job. That's my job, to remove an obstacle. And I really think it just took experience in it, because no one's good at managing right away, and again, there's training you can take, and you learn about the words, right? But until you experience, you have an issue with an employee, or you kind of deal with all the characters that you can deal with, you don't really learn what you're doing. And from my view, it took time to build my team eventually that I had, because after a while, you just start almost feeling as close to a family as you can at work, because you spend more time with them, really, more waking time. Mm-hmm. And, if you don't have that, like, one thing I started doing is just doing random events or activities after work, right? If it's just, I'd take my core team, which was just my direct reports, 4 o'clock on a Tuesday, I'd take them to Bailey's right next to work, and I'd buy them a beer, and we'd sit there and work out the mundane, boring stuff that we had to do. But, over time, then they're like, okay, Paul's trying to take time with us, but he also realizes this is really annoying and boring to do. And so you just build that rapport over time, I think. I don't know if that makes sense.
Oh, no, absolutely. I think that too, like what you're saying, yeah, that relationship is key.
Yeah.
For sure. So what surprised you? You were like, when you got that, made that shift again, you weren't necessarily sure you wanted it. No. So, and I think that this happens a lot with people. They are the technical person, and sometimes going into management is not always the route. No. But it clearly ended up being the right fit for you. But what ended up surprising you the most about it? What did you end up liking the most about it?
I really think it's, and again, I'm an introvert by nature, so I get done with work and I crawl into a hole, but I can play as an extrovert. And what I found was working with the people and understanding what they're up to. Like, I would just get out and walk around on the floor with my team and find out how their family's doing, find out what they're up to. And then, the last thing is like, hey, how's work going? Right. And I just started enjoying that part so much more. Like, I love the technical, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I feel like the energy and the support that you get from building up these people and supporting them, and, they realize it's genuine. It's not just Paul read a book and said, oh, okay, I got to go talk to Bill out on the floor, dang it, but I enjoyed it. I wanted to hear what they were up to. And I even had, in engineering, it's not very many women. I think I had 4 that worked for me. And I love these women because the views that they gave me that you don't hear from men about what's going on and what it's like to work here and whether it sucks or not. And, and there was one girl in particular that I would just call her in my office every like once a month. I'd be like, how is it really going out there? And I think to me, I found more joy out of these people than the work itself. It was so surprising. And in the end, I'd do anything for them, right? As much as I can protect them and make sure they've got their job and, they can do their job. That to me became more what I was interested in.
Yeah. I feel like, so you and I have talked a lot about like some of your philosophies about, and your philosophies on leadership, and you've touched on a few of them at a high level, but I was hoping you could share just like a couple of, your favorites, if you will,
Okay.
when you think about, your leadership style and, what you've seen and maybe other good leaders. What do you have to share in that regard?
Yeah, I think I remember this lady I worked with. She was kind of our team building HR/trainer at Meritor. She was contract. She had her own company, but she posted yesterday or the day before that her daughter just got promoted, and any advice for her as a new leader. And the one thing that I resonate with is you work for them, not the other way around. And maybe it sounds cliche, but I feel like instead of me putting my thumb down on people and like, here's what you need to do now, and here's how you do better, and here's what you screwed up,
Mm-hmm.
I should be more thinking about how do I make their life better so they can do their job and they're not worried about it. And, I've had bosses where I had one boss years ago who would stand behind my desk and I didn't even know he was there. I was just working and he would sit there for 10 minutes and watch my work and then touch me on the shoulder and scare the living, what out of me. And I'm like, that's where you start going, okay, well, that's bad. I don't want to ever do that to someone. So
Mm-hmm.
that to me is probably my biggest mantra I always try to tell people that work for me, that's my view. Like if you're feeling like you can't get your job done, then what can I do to kind of remove that obstacle, right? Um, I think, sorry, I've got some notes over here, but I think the other thing, I mean, I've got a lot of things, but one thing I like to do is kind of build a team identity. I've got a smaller team at Pratt Miller now, and the culture there doesn't seem to be as conducive to that. Not that it's bad, but everybody's so in their zone trying to get their work done. Um, I don't know how much team identity becomes a thing or not, but I knew I needed it for my team. So just doing whatever you can to alleviate people's like feeling like they're not part of something, right? That whether it's again as simple as a Teams chat that's your whole team and that you guys can like put chats in there. It can be jokes, it can be what's going on,
Mm-hmm.
here's the new AOP for 24, or it can be here's something funny that happened yesterday, right? To where they just start feeling like, hey, it's okay to be myself. I'm not being graded for how perfect I'm doing right now, and it's also kind of, I think it helps people relax, so they're not just like always worried like when's Paul going to yell at me, right? Which I won't do, but so
I
those are
can't you yelling in general.
no, I have gotten vocal, but it's when I don't feel like I'm being listened to and I just say, can I finish, but and that's probably as forceful as I get. So
Yeah.
hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you saying a couple of things that just like resonated to me, is that kind of that servant leader mentality of like when you were saying you work for them
Yeah.
versus somebody like who reports to you working for you. I think that that's like a big one. And in that, that kind of cultivates that kind of psychological safety, if you will, of letting people express themselves and not letting people not feel like you have your thumb on them and everything. So I know that's those are kind of the things that stood out to me there that I'm sure everybody can kind of resonate with. If you have other comments or questions for Paul, remember, drop them in the so I don't want you to feel ambushed, Paul, but
no, okay.
I'm sure people have lots of questions for you as well.
I'm not perfect either, so if I don't know the answer, I'll tell you.
No, I mean, who is? If anybody who says that, it's like the companies that come in and say, I can build your whole vehicle for you. And you're like, but can you? But no, this was all so helpful. I think that like your approach to, I think like the one thing we've always talked about, you and I, is like, it's just be human, just be real. And I think that I feel like throughout your whole career, that's one thing that personally I see when I look at it, like that has helped you, kind of get through that. Would you agree?
Yeah. And I feel like it's something I learned from a boss. I'll name him because he's passed. But he was such a great guy. His name was Tim Burns. And, I remember having other bosses that my son had cut the end of his toe off, and I still felt like I had to stay at work. My boss wouldn't say, why the heck are you here? Right? Just go take care of your family. And I ended up having to just leave and say, sorry, I'm going to go take care of my son. Well, this guy's Tim, my family was in like a fender bender accident in Troy. And I called him and said, hey, I'm going to go take care of my family. He's like, why are you calling me? Like, go take care of your family. You can text me or tell me later what happened. And from then on, I was like, I want that for myself. Right. So therefore everyone else, like family should always be first. And I think to me, that goes back to, treating people like they're a human, right? I can't pretend to know what your life is like and what you need to do to support your family or your friends or whatever. And for me to go, well, you should go on this trip. And I'm like, well, I don't have anybody to watch my kids. So sorry, And to me, that's a reality that we should be supporting. Otherwise, they're going to be like, well, he doesn't care about me or my life or what I'm going to do. So resume update and I'm out of here, right? Eventually. So.
Yeah, I think like the empathy factor is huge. So, well, I appreciate you so much getting on and sharing your insight with everybody. I know that, I love engaging, with people like you and learning and getting the opportunity to share people's careers, to my network. So, I don't know if, everybody watching. So FYI, I just launched my own newsletter, which for Charged Up, which is my career coaching company. Little known fact, if you launch a newsletter on LinkedIn, it gets blasted out to every single one of your contacts. So, oh yeah, I didn't know that. So
I don't know that either.
Yeah. So anybody watching, if you don't currently subscribe to the newsletter, do so. I actually have made it very intentional. I love doing these LinkedIn Lives so much. And last year, I kind of felt a little spastic with it. So I now have every other week somebody scheduled for the next through March. So we have people from Honda, people from Blue Origin, some consultants. John Quigley is going to be with me 2 weeks from now. So I will be putting that event out there. But subscribe to the newsletter and stay up to date with all the things that we have going on. I also talk about, what I see going on from an industry perspective, from a job market perspective, and some tips and tricks and stuff like that is in there as well for finding a new position. So, Paul, any closing remarks that you would like to share?
No, other than I'll just put a plug in for you. I've really enjoyed working with you, and anytime I see something that you post, I always feel like it's value added. And if you haven't talked to Ashley or started getting in contact with her, I think she can be a big help for you in your career. She can help you as far as finding jobs. I think just the benefits endless, and I found her to be very, very intelligent as far as like people and the things that maybe some of us struggle more with. So
Aw, thanks. That was nice and impromptu. All right. Well, I will wrap this up then. Thanks everybody for watching. Like I said, stay tuned and have a great rest of your day.
thanks, Ashley.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.